Beloveds, a miracle happened when I visited a Hungarian Unitarian partner church in Kénos, Romania. Kénos is a farming village in central Transylvania. Dan, could you put up the first map, please? So that's where Transylvania is located, and I'm not going to be able to reach, but like, do you see where the A is in Cluj-Napoca? Kénos is somewhere around there. Reverend Attila Andorko and his family were my hosts. One day we visited a regional park. The hiking trails followed a river flowing down from the mountains into the valley with some small waterfalls. You could see majestic views in all directions. It was just a marvel of natural beauty. And all these people were going there and they were hiking along the river and back down and then having picnics in the fields and some of them swimming in the river before headed back home. On our way home, one wheel of our all-wheel drive SUV got stuck in a muddy ditch. The access road was a plain dirt road, not even a gravel run, and it meandered through the rain-soaked fields, and as puddles developed, it had recently rained a lot. Cars would simply drive around the puddle, over the grass, creating new ruts. So we were stuck there in the middle of a rain-soaked field, and there was no cell service there. So I was beginning to wonder how Reverend Andorko was going to get in touch with the Romanian version of AAA. As it turns out, there is no such thing as AAA in Romania, or how he was going to pay for the repairs for this trip that they undertook on my behalf to see the beauties of the Transylvanian Carpathian Mountains. Another SUV pulled up around us and asked if we needed a tow. They just pulled up. They just asked. We didn't have to do the asking. Yes, Köszönöm, thank you. I thought they were going to pull out some old tow ropes or some old ropes that they had and pull the vehicle out. No, Reverend Andorko pulls out a tow cable. The other guy pulls out a tow cable. They clip it to the hitches and the hitches on both cars, and they're towing us out of the ditch, lickety-split, really easy. Everyone carries tow cables in their cars in Romania, probably because there is no AAA service. Once we got out of the ditch, Reverend Andorko discovered that his transmission had broken on his SUV when it collapsed into that ditch. We were stuck, I thought. But this is when the second miracle happened. The other vehicle offered to tow us to the next village, to tow us out of the park, out of these muddy fields, onto the gravel road, onto the paved road, onto the next village and drop us off there. It boggled my mind that such a thing might possibly happen. Once we got to the village, Reverend Andorko called one of his cousins, who was an auto mechanic, and he came over with a car. They rescued us, they towed the vehicle. We all got back home to Kénos, safe and sound, and there in the evening, we shared shots of the traditional Hungarian plum brandy moonshine that's called palinka. As we raised our glass, we said to each other, Eke Segedre! Can you repeat? Eke Segedre! Okay, that works. Which means like, to your health, salud, that greeting in Hungarian. So I know like 3 phrases of Hungarian, that's one of them. That's the most important. If any phrase, if you ever go to that part of the world, the one phrase you need to know is Eke Segedre. These are marvelous examples of generosity. People selflessly helping other people in need, expecting no reward. It's just what good people do. If a car breaks down, you pull over and you help them out, see how you can help. Generosity is a shared Unitarian Universalist value. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and our Hungarian Unitarian siblings share that same value. Generosity, kindness, is a basic human value. The Hungarian Unitarian Church is the oldest extant Unitarian denomination in the world. It celebrates January 13th, 1565 as its anniversary. And I'm pointing to this framed calligraphy. That's the day, January 13, 1565 is the day when the King of Hungary and the Prince of Transylvania, Zapolai János Sigismund, in English John Sigismund Zapolya, issued the Edict of Torda. And the Edict of Torda is the first time in history since the Protestant Reformation that religious tolerance was legislated. It granted Christians and their congregations freedom of religious self-determination to decide what denomination they want to belong to, Unitarian or Lutheran or Reformed, which we might call Presbyterian in our country, or Catholic. And it also said that the government will not interfere in the religion of the congregations. We might call that separation of church and state in our own country. So unfortunately, that era of short-lived religious freedom ended that era of religious freedom was short-lived under the reign of the world's only Unitarian king. Sadly, his Catholic successor persecuted and repressed Protestants as part of the Catholic Counter-Reformation. So the Transylvanian Hungarians, the Unitarians and others, they have a popular house blessing that we sung today. It's called Secele Aldas. It means Secele blessing. So who or what are the Seceles? Could you put up the second slide, please, the second image? So there we have the country of Romania and the Secele lands, the lands where the Secele ethnic group lives, and they're Hungarian speaking, and Unitarian is one of their major religions. So the Seceles are a Hungarian subgroup. They speak a unique dialect of Hungarian, and they have their own Transylvanian culture and history. They number about 500,000, and they have been there for centuries and centuries and centuries. They believe themselves to be descended from the Huns, as in Attila the Hun. You might recall that my host family's family name is Attila. They live in Secele land in central Transylvania. And besides in these territories and those surrounding territories, there's an additional 700,000 Hungarians who live there in Transylvania. And Unitarianism is the third largest religion in Transylvania. To understand the Secele setting, think of the Amish in the United States, like in Pennsylvania or in Indiana, or maybe the Louisiana Creole people, or the Sea Islands, Gulagichi people of the Carolinas. They all speak unique dialects of their respective languages, be it German or French or English. They have their own cultures and histories, unique unto themselves, but they're also intertwined into broader American culture as well. So that's something like the life of what the Seceles are like in Transylvania. So since that short-lived Edict of Torda, this time of religious tolerance, the Seceles have been an oppressed ethnic minority, and their religion, Unitarianism, an oppressed religious group in Transylvania. The Catholic-run Kingdom of Hungary and then later the Austro-Hungarian Empire, as well as both the democratic and communist Romanian regimes, sought to convert their religion, to change their language, and to wipe out their identity. But they failed. The Seceles patiently and willfully survived centuries of harsh political and religious oppression, not unlike the attacks that the ethnic and religious minorities face in our country today. The Seceles have been maligned as foreigners and illegals living in their ancestral homelands, because they speak a different language and speak a different religion than the majority population around them. In that long history, they were also part of the Ottoman Empire. And it was under the Islamic Ottomans that they again had religious and ethnic freedom. Reverend Dondorko explains that the Transylvanian people are determined to maintain their Unitarian Hungarian identity. This is their love. This is who they are. And they recognize that a foreign country that rules them wants their land, but not them. Transylvanian people have lived there long before that region became part of Romania about 100 years ago. Being faithful Unitarians is very important to them. It's who they are. They tell stories of their ancestors being Unitarians. They tell stories that go back to the Protestant Reformation of how their families rejected Catholicism and became Unitarian instead. And they all tell a similar story about how the Trinity just simply doesn't make any sense to them. I think it's like part of that shared storytelling, you know, like George Washington and the cherry tree, or Abraham Lincoln and the dollar that he found. Reverend Dondorko lives his life according to a biblical quote that he translates loosely from Hungarian. And it goes something like this: even though sometimes life may be difficult and not fair, the cheerful heart has a continual feast. Proverbs 15:15. Proverbs is his favorite book of the Bible. In spite of these hardships, the Hungarian Unitarians have held fast to their heritage, to their religion, and to their commitment to loving their neighbors, all their neighbors, no matter who their neighbors are. They believe this to be the core, essential teaching of what Christianity is. They have a Hungarian Unitarian catechism, like many religious denominations have catechisms. And the first question in that catechism explains the purpose of life as follows: love towards God and love towards our neighbor, parentheses, all neighbors. They emphasize that all neighbors aspect of love. And they have sought to do this for 450 plus years. Their generosity, the generosity of towing a vehicle stuck in a ditch, the generosity of towing a vehicle to the next village that's broken down, and lots of other generosities. These are embodiments of such love. We, American Unitarian Universalists, are inheritors to a religious tradition that has thrived, that has flourished in our own country. In part, we need to acknowledge, due to our historic privilege that we've had as a mostly white middle-class denomination. We are so used to expressing our religious values, our political opinions, and having them heard and embodied in our country, shaping the American way of life. Beloveds, our American Unitarian Universalist values and the values of the Hungarian Unitarians are all based in love. A century ago, the Unitarians of our country defined our core religious values as freedom, reason, and tolerance. Today, we define them as generosity, justice, interdependence, equality, transformation, and pluralism. And yes, as Mike said, today our religious values are ignored and even attacked in our country. We are not used to this loss of privilege, to this loss of influence. But our Hungarian Unitarian siblings in faith know how to cope with such situations. They know how to be the underdog in society. They still pursue love of neighbor, helping one another out, because that is the core of who they are, that is a core of what their religious identity teaches them to be. They still pursue love, love of neighbor, love of all neighbors, and generosity, as in the blessing that they share with the world. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. Amen.